Welcome to the St. Croix farm. We're here today to tour around and show you folks what we do here every day as far as grazing cattle and chickens. The St. Croix farm has been in the Moore family since 1932. Our grandfather Ira purchased the farm and we've been here ever since. So it's about 720 acres, which is a little over a square mile. If anyone's ever been to Central Park in New York, that's 840 acres, just to give you an idea of scale. Up in Saratoga, from Lake Avenue to Union Avenue, and from Broadway to the Northway, is roughly the same footprint as our farm. It's a little over a square mile. So we pasture raise cattle and chickens and hogs. Chickens and hogs mostly in the green growing season. Cattle we go year round. So they have a diet of fresh grass that we move the cows every day. That way we can use the cattle to spread the nutrients around the entire farm. Their manure is deposited in every corner where they graze. And as they move every day to a new spot, they get fresh grass and they're not hampered in by that manure at all. Save us from spreading it. No trucks, no tractors. We let the cows do all the work when it comes to that, and they do all their own harvesting. So we're standing up here on one of the highest parts of the farm looking across the valley to the east. But as we move around today, you're going to see some different grass, different heights of grass, some where the cattle have been and some where they haven't been yet. So why don't we get started and we'll start moving around. One of our biggest challenges as a grazer is trying to keep the grass at just the right height for the cows. So just like a teenager probably has the most energy of a human being, when that grass, when it's in that adolescent stage, older adolescent, has the most energy. So sometimes we move the cows over a bigger area quickly, and sometimes we confine them so that they'll eat different amounts of the plant. But if we look right down here now, this grass is about 12 to 16 inches tall. This is what we're trying to achieve to keep this grass in front of the cows year round. So when a cow goes down and starts to graze, it's what we call first bite. So if we take like a 12 to 16 inch circle here and mimic what a cow would bite, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bites, that is some high energy feed right there. There's not a lot of stem, there's some, but the majority of what she's eating is leaf. Just like when you're eating a zucchini, you want a nice young zucchini, not one of those old baseball bats. So this is some high energy feed. So we would try to get the cows out of here after they had removed the tip, but left some solar panel to capture energy from the sun and turn it into food energy. Because if we wait and leave the cow in here and she goes back for second bite, now you can see a lot more stem there, a lot more woody, less digestive fiber for the cow to eat. There is still some leaf there. It's not great pasture, but it's not so bad either. But what we try to do is get them out at first bite after they've removed 4 to 6 inches off the top of what we call some perfect grass. And it sounds easy, but when you're trying to keep your entire farm, and it's different every year, the growing degrees days come at different times of the year. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's wet. The grass will explode with some spring growth, and you're trying to capture all that, and then it slows down in the summertime, and hopefully you've got some stuff in the bank that you can go to. It's not easy. It's a learning curve, and it takes a long time to try to figure out how many animals to have on your farm and how much grass you've got ahead of you. It's an evolving process, and we learn a little bit more every year. So we're down here on a pasture that has a lot of nice legume mix, some clover and some grasses together. And some vetch around the edges you'll see. So this is some grass here where we can finish some cattle. And when we say finish, we're going to get them up to a harvested weight. Instead of cattle going into a feed yard, you know, this is where that work would take place for us. And if you've ever seen a feed yard, you know, there's no green grass in there at all. They bring all the feed to the cattle. Where we let the cattle harvest their own nutritious food. And you can see, like here, they've already snipped the tops of those pieces off there, like we talked about earlier with first bite. Because we were in here for about an hour before the cows went to get a drink of water, and they'll be coming back after a bit. But I just wanted to show you this. And you know, here on the St. Croix farm, we're trying to work with nature instead of working against it. And by leaving this grass taller, when we get those large rain events that we seem to get now in the summertime, there's a lot less runoff. We've also are increasing our organic matter by letting our plant roots expand in that subsurface area, and they can hold more moisture that way when we do get a storm. The other thing, you know, we do less and less work with the tractors. We use these little four-wheel buggies. You know, we made some boxes on the front to put some posts in, and by moving away from tractors and going to those little buggies, our fuel consumption for the farm averages about 30 gallons of fuel a week, and that includes our delivery van that we deliver one day a week. Now we don't deliver hardly anything at all with the restaurants closed down, so we're probably closer to 20 gallons a week. And you know, people talk about reducing their carbon footprint, and I think we're doing a real good job at that, and we're sequestering a lot of carbon in the soil. And you know, most civilizations through time, their wealth has been built on carbon in one form or another, whether it be with fossil fuels or with timber, or you know, those areas. And once the carbon was depleted, those civilizations, you know, kind of went downhill, whether it be the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, or you know, out west, we're continually mining carbon out there without the use of chemical fertilizer. Then you know, we'd be in real trouble in this country. But by going this route, you know, we haven't used any fertilizer in 6 or 7 years on our farm, other than when we seed a field down that we've taken back from a tenant. So it can be done. We like to think that we're proving that. It's just you have to open up your mindset to a different type of farming than what you're used to seeing. And that's what we are here. I had a kid that came one time to fix our furnace, and he said, you know, I've driven by this place my whole life on the school bus. I didn't even know it was a farm. And I think, you know, I took pride in that statement, because it's not like there's a whole fleet of brand new machinery out front that we're gearing up to get in the field every year. It's me and one other guy, full-time, Mark, doing a lot of work on foot and some on a buggy. But and it's mostly these girls right here. They're doing most of the work. This is a group here of mostly mature cows that are going to have some calves, and then there's some finishers that are coming behind, what we call stocker cattle at this time. They're growing into cattle that we can harvest in the future. They're probably in the back of the pack. The cows tend to be a little more aggressive when it comes to going and getting that grass. But if we just walk up over this ridge, you'll see those finishers and maybe even a few calves coming along, stockers I guess, and a few calves coming along. But yeah, this is where we finish cattle, out here on green grass. And you know, the thing is, we've got a big diversified plant species here. We've also got a diversified herd of cattle. They're not just straight Angus, there's some Herefords, there's some crossbred cows. We're just looking for a good cow that can thrive on grass, and we get the grass in front of her, and the two of them work quite well. You know, if you watch some of these cows as they eat, they don't stay right in one spot, but we had talked about that first bite earlier. And you can see how they're just selecting the top of the plant at this point because of the height. They're not going to eat this mustard this first time around, but and the next time around when we graze this field, we'll have the cows grouped up a little tighter, and if they don't eat it, they'll trample it down. And that's how we build our soils up, is by trampling those forages that are undigestible or mature. The cows will trample them down flat, and that adds to that soil carbon and increases our organic matter. And that's the key, is that organic matter. So we're out here, we're going to film an actual cow move today. This is a lot of what we do during the day with a couple different groups of cows, but you can see Mark over here, he's coming across with our little buggy, and he uses this poly twine or braid and some step-in posts. So he's putting a post in every 15 to 20 paces or so, and you can see that this grass right here has been grazed off, maybe even a little bit overgrazed. But over there, we're going to let the cows take the tops off of that grass. He's going to make his way right over to here, and then that line will be done. And then tomorrow we'll replicate the same process. And the cows, as you can see, are coming down here. They know that when they see Mark or myself on that buggy, that it's feeding time and fresh feed. We're going to leave all this feed that we've grazed behind, leave the manure behind, and fresh grass every day. That's a big thing for us. So we'll swing back around here and see him finish up. So if you come over here to the camera, you can see the difference between where we were yesterday on the left, has been grazed, versus where we're going today on the right. And this is a pretty good mixture here. It's a little bit of clover and some canary grass, with some veg straw, some other grasses in there. Just like we don't want to eat the same diet with ourselves all the time, we want to eat a varied diet. The cows can select their own diet from what's out here, but by limiting how much we give them, they don't eat all the dessert on the first day, and then have to go back and eat the asparagus later on. This grass is a little short, but it's early season and we're working our way through it, just creaming the top off it, and that's a cattle move. So this is an area that we're going to describe as silvopasture, which is the cultivation of trees, silviculture, and pasture. So these areas are coexisting. We are producing fiber and food. This area was pretty heavily wooded. Just let me turn around and show you over here. You can see about the density that it was before we started. And we did this work in 2018 in July. We had this logged off. Some boys came in and they used what they call whole tree harvest. So some foresters came in and marked and left the best trees behind as seed trees, and we took out the most undesirable trees, and then we came in behind them and we spun on some clover and some timothy and some rye. And then we used the cows behind that to kind of push that into the ground and the hoof action to get it incorporated. And there's some weeds in here too, but we're probably about 2 weeks away from getting the cows in here for a second year of grazing. And it's a pretty exciting area for us because it was an unproductive wood lot prior to this. And now we've picked up about 55 to 60 acres of what's we hope to turn into high quality grazing over time. We didn't stump it out. We just let the cows eat around the stumps. We just need to get them up in here and control those undesirables by confining their grazing a little bit and making them eat some of the plants that normally they would leave behind. But I think it looks pretty good for something that was logged, what I'm saying is 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in July. Silvopasture is a word that you're going to hear a lot more about, and we hope to employ a lot more on our farm as we try to make grazing available for every acre that we have. And like I say, this is a dual purpose. We're going to have some nice trees in a few years as they mature and branch out a little bit. The growth is supposed to be exponential, and it's a pretty exciting area. If you ever want to see it, stop by, we'll give you a tour. So this is an area where we did some winter feeding, because we do have to feed a little bit of hay to get through those winter months. So this area is kind of protected from the wind a little bit, so the cows can live down here over the winter without a barn. Everybody stays outside every day of the year, and we dropped some round bales or unrolled some round bales. And this is an area that we're kind of trying to rehab. We won't be in here too many years doing winter feeding, but it had grown up to a lot of weeds and undesirable plants that the cows just wouldn't eat. So by increasing the fertility and then maybe bringing a different species in, like some sheep that will eat those broadleaf plants, we'll turn it back into some more desirable forage for the cows. You can see it's kind of stunted now. There's not a lot of growth here because that winter feeding does take its toll on the sod. But if you look around, there's quite a few cow pops and some hay, and that'll turn into some pretty good ground in a year or two. And it'll be interesting to watch this area develop. So right now we're going to take a look at our weed and brush removal system. We don't use any herbicide to remove those problem invasives. We're going to use goat power and let them do it naturally, because let's turn a negative into a positive, and if we can build up our goat herd while eliminating some invasive species of brush, let's do that. So honeysuckle and multiflora rose, be ready, because these guys are ready to go. So we've come up here to get a look at the chicken production on the St. Croix farm. If you're familiar with a chicken tractor, it's no different than what anybody else does, but what we do there is we try to focus on the ground that needs the most improvement with fertility. So you can see here this grass here and some forbs and clover. It's a little bit lacking in that robustness that we saw earlier in the day. So we're going to run the chickens up here, and sometimes there might be 10 or 11 coops at once depending on what time of the season and how many orders we have for birds, but it's pretty early in the season. We've only got one coop out so far, but you can see what we do and just imagine it at full production with 7 or 8 or 10 coops. So we're going to scoot that coop ahead every day, just like we do with the cattle get fresh grass. The chickens do too. Only the thing that's even more important with them is, because they're confined in a small space, is leaving that manure behind, but distributing it over an even pattern. They put down a lot of nitrogen, which makes for some great grass. A year from now, you'll be able to almost see where that coop was if you look at it from high up with a drone, or even some satellite photos where we were a few years ago. You can almost see those green tracks from the coops where those chickens have deposited a lot of nitrogen. So if you can see, there's about 70 birds in this, what most people would refer to as a chicken tractor. They're in there for their safety as more than anything from predators. But they can get out of the sunlight if they want to, or they can come out and just relax in the sun. So you see these guys can roam around within this large coop. They're not confined in a small little space like they would be in a brooder house. And they can kind of rummage around for some bugs in there and eat some leaves. When you can see this guy here, he's trying to get some stuff right off the front. So we showed you some of our upland soils and silvopasture and so forth. This is some of the lowest elevation on the farm. We're on the banks of the Pompawana Creek. That runs through our farm on the southeast corner. Clean water is very important to us. And by leaving our grass a little bit taller as we graze it, it's able to retain more rainwater from these events that we get. We don't get as much runoff. It keeps the streams a little cleaner. The other thing, clean water reminds us about ASA and local farms and stewardship of the land. They helped us conserve our farm in 2009. It was a pretty big deal for us. Local farms, local food. We're seeing that now more than ever, how important that is moving forward. To have some producers in the neighborhood where people can come and buy some food. And we are part of that program. ASA is going to keep this land farming or farmable from now until the end of time. And that's very important.
Hi, I'm Eva, John's wife. Welcome to the St. Croix farmhouse. You've heard about all the wonderful things that the farmers do out on our farm, taking care of the land, taking care of the animals, and I want to tell you what that means for you. After the boys are done doing all that hard work, they curate a freezer full of delicious, nutritious proteins that we make available to you. We do this in a couple of ways. We offer individual sales. So if you want a pound of burger or some steaks or a roast, we can take care of you that way. We also offer CSA memberships. So CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And what that is a partnership between consumers and farmers. The farmer pledges to provide nutrient-dense, healthy food, and the consumer promises to buy that food. It helps us so that we can plan what to have in our freezer to be sure that we have what you would like throughout the entire year. It helps you because it provides you with healthy food, and it also helps you make a difference in your community by keeping your resources here and promoting a healthy lifestyle for not only yourself but for your neighbors as well. So all of the information is available on our website, stcroixfarm.net, or you can also give me a call at 518-859-9800 if you have any questions. We would love to have you become part of our farm family. You can also sign up for our newsletter on our website, stcroixfarm.net. And that's where you could get information about any upcoming events we have. We regularly schedule tours so that you can come out here and see exactly what we do, where we do it, and how we do it. We partner with some chefs and offer farm-to-table suppers. That information would be in our newsletter as well for when they are happening. But if you're just really excited and can't wait for our next scheduled tour, get in contact with us and we will put together a private tour so you can come out and meet us and see what we do. We'd love to have you.